Welcome to New Independence Network. I am Brett Hightower, your host for today and every day. As often as we got this going, I will be here for you. So, big news today. Big news. A lot of things really in the hopper here. So where do we begin? Well, I want to address the elephant in the room, the big news. President Donald Trump has signed the executive border emergency. Well within his purview to do so. Well within his constitutional right to do so. He declared the border emergency, made a speech this afternoon or late this morning from I think it was the Rose Garden or the front lawn of the White House. And he said he's going to sign the border emergency because the Democrats aren't giving him enough money in the budget. He asked for 25. Listen, the timeline. I already asked for $25 billion. Then they got it down to, I think they came to $1.7 billion. Then he said, well, we'll go with $5.5 billion or 5.7. And then they came back with the ludicrous 1.37. When they said after the last lockout that they weren't going to give a dollar. Nancy Pelosi, he's not getting a dollar. I'm sorry, that's a bad Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, she's not getting a dollar. He's not getting a dollar. Okay, so he's not getting a dollar, but you gave him $1.37 billion. So you did give him more than just a dollar. Now, keep in mind, the $1.37 billion is a hell of a lot less than Congress approved Barack Obama give Iran $1.8 billion. They gave Iran, they approved $1.8 billion to a terrorist state, allegedly in return for some hostages. So Barack Obama was able to fund a terrorist state to help them create nukes, buy armaments and weapons, and strengthen their terrorist network. Congress is okay with that, but they wouldn't give any more than $1.37 billion to build a wall. And 6 miles of wall is an insult. Understandably, President Trump is offended by this, as well he should be. So he said, I'm going to do what's right. He tried to go the right way through Congress. Now keep in mind, Donald Trump has been trying very hard to do things the right way. He's been trying to work with Congress. He's been trying to negotiate as best as possible and go through the proper channels. He's still following the law, but he's trying to go through the proper channels, hoping that people would see his way. People would actually come to their senses and say, yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let's secure the border because that's more important than anything else. However, he forgets that Democrats do not want to help in any way. All that talk, we warned you here about that. Check out a podcast right after he won the election. And they were saying, oh, well, we have to heal now. Now it's a time of healing. So we have to come together and be unified. This is what the Democrats said. And they say it every time. And it doesn't work. It's always a lie. They never want to come together. When they say we want to be unified, they mean we want you to do what we want to do. It's never we want to work with you and help you out. No, there's no way. The only way that George W. Bush was able to accomplish anything was by bowing to the whims of the Democrats. So we get the No Child Left Behind Act, which is an absolute travesty, and a bunch of other things that are all based on what Democrats want. That's their idea of bipartisanship. Bipartisanship means has to be something the Democrats want, and everyone else needs to go along with it. The person, honestly, who was the most truthful about the whole philosophy of the Democrats was Barack Obama. There was a report when after the second landslide mass takeover of Congress by Republicans in 2013 or 2014, they were in a meeting with the Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader, and Congressional Majority Leader, Speaker of the House. And they were sitting, it was Boehner, it wasn't Speaker of the House, it was Boehner and, well, he was Speaker then. So it was Boehner and McConnell. They were in a room with Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And Biden, old career politician, understood the game, and he's like, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want? Because they won. It showed that the country wants what the Republicans want. And they were about to speak. And Barack Obama chimed in and said, nope, it doesn't matter. I'm the president. We won, and we're going to do what I want to do. So he had no intention of working things out. Well, that's really the real deal. That's the progressive extreme deal. That's what we have in Congress, and it's been that way for a long time. Some try to cross over to save their political careers, but Obama didn't care. He was in his last term anyway, so it didn't matter. It was all about Obama. So there's no desire to ever work with the Republicans or a Republican president. The only time they want to work with Republicans in any way, shape, or form is if the Republicans are establishment rhinos who will cater to what the Democrats want. And this is what we've had. You know, a lot of people, you see it on Twitter, a lot of people ask, well, why didn't, you may have heard your friends ask, well, why didn't Donald Trump do anything for the first 2 years? He had control of both the House and the Senate. But there's a major difference. You see, Barack Obama had control of the House and Senate for the first 2 years. And we've said that. Why didn't he pass Obamacare then? Why didn't he? Well, he didn't pass Obamacare in the first 2 years because he knew it was horrible, and he wanted to make sure that Democrats don't only take the blame when things go wrong. What he didn't expect is that no Republicans voted for Obamacare in the Congress at all, or in the House at all. But Obama, in his first 2 years in the White House, in his presidency, he had control of the House and the Senate, but he also had a super majority in the Senate. He had over 60 votes. It was a filibuster-proof majority. So he could have passed anything he wanted, anything at all, in those first 2 years. But he didn't do it, which makes you scratch your head. So he was a failure because he couldn't get that stuff passed. But Donald Trump had control of the House and Senate, but he only had 51 seats, and you need 60 seats. You're not going to go with a, quote, nuclear option and just go by one vote majority. They go with a 60-vote plural majority, 60 votes. And nothing was going to get accomplished because he never had the 60 votes, and he's not going to be able to swing 9 people over. And to Trump's admission, when he spoke at the White House today, he said, in the first couple of years, he addressed this. And he said, in the first couple of years, I'm not a politician, so I was learning the job. And this is the truth. This is what it really comes back down to, is that Donald Trump is not a politician. He's a businessman. He's a real estate mogul. So Donald Trump doesn't understand all the inner workings. And he surrounded himself with people that could guide him in the process. What he didn't know is the deep state runs deep. The establishment is the establishment. They're a big fraternity. You ever see the kids in school who they're part of the clique, that one group, the elite little group, and anybody else is not part of that group, and if you're an outsider, they will use you as much as they can to better themselves and then throw you under the bus as soon as possible? That is the establishment government. Establishment Republicans, establishment Democrats, you name it. And the rhinos are included. They're even worse. People like Romney, that fraud. I can't stand Romney. He is an absolute fraud, a liar, a charlatan, a creep. He's like McCain. I don't care if McCain's dead. I don't care. He was a disgrace. So yeah, that's a question. Now that I stop and think about that, did you ever notice how Lindsey Graham is really, after McCain died, he was all never Trump, never Trump. Then after McCain dies, Lindsey Graham's coming out of his shell and he's like, hey, I'm all on board for Donald Trump. And he's supporting him and he's fighting during the Kavanaugh hearings. He's very vocal. He's on Fox News. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, I believe he's a shoo-in to get reelected in South Carolina. But why all of a sudden is he Trump? And why just after McCain died? It makes you wonder, did John McCain have something on Lindsey Graham? Did he know a little secret about Lindsey Graham that he took to the grave with him? And then once he was gone, Lindsey Graham says, whew, okay, now I can be myself and John McCain can't keep his leash on me. I don't know. But back to that point, we have a lot of rhinos and we have the establishment Republicans. And the establishment Republicans or the establishment government do not want the outsiders. They're the clique. They're that elite group. So how dare Donald Trump invade their little fraternity? And the establishment has everybody on their side. They have the media on their side. Now you're going to say, well, the media is a Democrat media. Yes, it is. But if it's a Venn diagram, the big circle is all media are Democrats, and all media support Democrats, but the circle intersects because some media support Republicans when they have a common enemy, and the common enemy in this case was Donald Trump. So they're hoping, like they did with McCain and they've done with so many others, can they swing the Republicans to their side and hope that the Republicans understand, we're very valuable media. You need us to get along. If you don't have us, we can destroy your chances to get reelected. So for years, Republicans fell right into that trap. And they're still doing it, or we're doing it for the first 2 years, specifically the first 9 months of Donald Trump's presidency. Now, there's several reasons as well. It's not just the fact that they're part of the fraternity. That's a huge part. Don't get me wrong. And we're going to circle back to that because we have another point to make today that really brings it to light. But for the first 9 months, the Republicans believed that, they believed that Donald Trump was, he's the outsider, he's illegitimate, and we're all part of our clique, our group. How dare you? How dare you invade our little fraternity and upset the apple cart and try to change the way we do things? You see, gone are the days of a regular person being a politician. That's gone. We'll come back to that too. So Donald Trump comes in, they get bent out of shape, and they refuse to help him out because they're butthurt over the fact that, oh my God, we have a guy out here who's just a businessman. He's not a career politician. He hasn't earned his bones through the Washington infrastructure. So we have to do everything we can to kind of hamper what he's doing. And they did. If the Republicans, and I blame the Republicans hugely, Paul Ryan is a major problem. I blame the Republicans for a lot of the problems we have right now. Here's what I mean. Donald Trump was doing everything he could in good faith. He brought in Reince Priebus to try to tighten the bond. He was his chief of staff. He had a lot of Washington people that were part of the establishment that he thought he could trust. And they ended up leaking all the time. That's why he was getting rid of them. And he had to learn. I mean, think about this. Donald Trump's a new guy. He doesn't understand Washington, so he has to bring in people who do understand Washington. So they're going to come in, work with him, teach him the ropes, so he thinks, and then he'll be able to cast them aside, replace them with his own people, his own network of people that he learns to trust over time. That's why, he had some guys in there. He had Bannon. Bannon's problem. Bannon is a bit of a wacky dude. I mean, you look at him, he looks like a disheveled hobo. really does. It doesn't really fit the Donald Trump mode. But he's also was an aggressive guy. And I think Donald Trump liked him because he was an outsider as well, kind of. But the problem with someone like Bannon is Bannon wants to be taken legitimately, considered legitimate. What do I mean by that? Well, you have a lot of those people. People who work for independent sources like Daily Wire or this one or that one or even Politico or Breitbart, who they're doing this job, but deep down inside, they really want to be accepted by the mainstream media. They want to be taken seriously. Honestly, as intelligent as he is, as conservative as he says he is, I firmly believe that. Oh, what is his name? Oh Lord, he writes for Daily. He runs Daily Wire. Hold on, I gotta find him because I can see his face. Daily Wire editor-in-chief is Ben Shapiro. Thank you. There it is. Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, I believe, he wants to be taken more seriously. I don't think he wants to be as independent as he really is. And that's the kind of guy that I wouldn't really trust him. Just something about him comes across that way. But I could be wrong. But absolutely, Bannon really is one of those. So Bannon was, I think, a leaker. And he's trying to curry favor with the mainstream media by leaking information from the White House, which is another reason why they got rid of him. He rubbed people the wrong way, and he thought he was more important than he really was. So, you got to learn the ropes, and you got to learn who you can trust and who you can't trust. That's just business. And you're going to have these people say, well, Donald Trump says he only picks the best people. He says it all the time. Right. He thinks you're the best, but if you ran a business, you understand that you have to go through a lot of people to find the best. And he got people that he thought were good. They couldn't do the job. He moved them on, and he's bringing in others. He's never been a president before. He's just been a businessman. It's a very, very different type of job. Does that mean he's not qualified for it? No, absolutely not. And his track record it proves it. He's doing phenomenal things right now with the economy. He's changing trade. He's really helping. He's changing the face of the country, believe it or not. If he can get elected for one more term, which I do think he will be, the mark he will put on this country, the way he will have changed this country, will be beneficial for generations. And it's going to be very hard to undo what he's doing, especially because it's successful. So the trade deal with China, and if we're bringing in billions of dollars from them on tariffs, and we're helping our businesses make more money, well, who's going to want to stop that? Well, there are some that would, because you have your globalist politicians who would just as soon give our economy over to China. Clinton was one. Bush was one. All of them were. Bush, Clinton, Obama, they loved it. They wanted a globalist economy, part of the New World Order. Even George H.W. Bush spoke of a New World Order. Well, that's not how it works. You see, you have to take care of your home before you can take care of your neighbor's home. If you are on a plane, they always say put your mask on first before you mask someone else up. If your house is falling apart, are you going to go give money to your neighbor whose house is not as bad off? No. You're going to fix your house first, because if you have no place to live, you can't help anybody. If you have no source of income, you can't assist anybody. So you have to take care of the United States first. You can't take care of all the countries in the world and let yours go to pot. That's the philosophy Donald Trump operates under, and it's a wise philosophy. So hopefully nothing will change. But you know and I know, if a Democrat takes office, they'll try. They'll try to make it globalist. That's why we need a whole second term of Donald Trump, 8 full years of his philosophy, to drive home the new attitude of this country. I mean, look at what 8 years of Obama did to this country. Look at what 8 years did in 8 years. And we had a little bit of sexual harassment talk, a little bit of the PC culture that started to percolate under Clinton. A little bit. But you still had, rough humor, you still had questionable stuff, and it was okay to make jokes. It was okay. No one was offended about every little thing. So we had about 8 years. Now that came on, keep this in mind, putting it in perspective for those who may not have been alive back then. When Ronald Reagan came on board, the country was in turmoil under Carter. I'm not going to go too long on this, but I want to illustrate it. Ronald Reagan, 8 years of conservatism, right, or conservatism, 8 years, and the country embraced that. Oh yeah, there was a lot of money. We made a lot of money. That was huge. The economy was roaring. People made big dollars. It was a decade of excess. The 80s basically under Reagan. So the country was huge. It was, hey, America's the best. We're the best as we should be. And I have an old campaign button in my collection from Ronald Reagan. And what was in his first campaign? What was his slogan? One of his slogans? He had the morning in America, but one of his slogans was, "Make America Great Again." And no one questioned it back then. You never had people saying, "Oh, he wants racism. He wants to go back to the 50s. No. The reason that came up was because of Obama, and we're getting there. So Reagan had 8 years, and that changed the culture of the country. And then George H.W. Bush still carried Reagan's torch for another 4 years. He was gravitating toward the globalist side of things, but he was still conservative or using the Ronald Reagan mold, and he's working with that because it was successful for 8 years. So we had 12 years, really, of Reagan, basically 12 years of his philosophy. That's a lot of people. So if you're an 18-year-old voting, you're 30. And you have a kid in your 20s, well, that kid's being raised with your philosophy, and there's conservatism. So then you have Bill Clinton comes on board, and they're trying to change things, make it more progressive, more socialist, so to speak, very, very liberal. And you had bits and pieces of it. You had the sexual harassment thing with Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. You had the gays in the military attempt, and that failed miserably. So Clinton just said, okay, don't ask, don't tell. He caved on that pretty quickly. We had the attempts at Hillary Care, and that was a disaster, so that failed. So the cultural influence of Ronald Reagan for 12 years could not be stopped by Bill Clinton. It was hard to do that because it was such a strong, palpable feel in this country. You had your angst-ridden grunge types who dealing with affluenza. They're affluent and they're making money, and then they feel bad about themselves, so they whine about it. Oh, poor me! I have too much money. Poor me. But speaking of too much money, did you hear what Bill Gates said? Bill Gates comes out and says, there's no reason a person should make this much money. Are you kidding me? I love how these richies pretend, Zuckerberg, Gates, whoever, Buffett, they pretend that having money is a burden and it's unfair and they shouldn't have that much money when they're worth billions of dollars. They can buy whatever they want to buy. And they act like it's a problem. And they do that so the Democrats will get off of their tails and say, oh, well, don't worry about them. They're not part of the elite that we're worried about in terms of paying taxes because they really want to pay more taxes. Well, then nothing's stopping you from paying taxes, Bill. Nothing. You can go online, any person you have who says we should be collecting more taxes, we should be giving more to the government. Any of your socialist or progressive friends, if you have them, when they say that, it's pretty simple. Tell them, okay, go to the IRS. You can do a voluntary gift to the government whenever you want for how much ever you want. You just go online and you file the form. It's really easy to do. So if you want to pay more in taxes, you want to pay 70%, 90% of your income, go ahead and do it. Don't make me do it, but go ahead. No, but you want to burden everybody else, where it's not going to hurt you because you're wealthy, but it's going to hurt everyone else below you because every dollar we lose really makes a difference. You're worth $16 billion. Whoopee. That's nothing if you lose a little bit of money. So, and meanwhile, they talk about how they hate it, but they love the fact that they're rich. They love it. They couldn't function otherwise if they weren't wealthy. Their lifestyles are so set. So please, please. But anyway, back to my original point. So you had the culture from Reagan carry over into Clinton's culture, or trying to establish a culture. We had 8 years, but the problem with Clinton was good and bad. Clinton was a very good politician. So Bill Clinton, when he got elected 2 years later, for the first time in 50 years, Democrats lost control of the House and the Senate, 1994 midterms. Well, that's a big deal. And Clinton said, wait a second. They're not ready. We're trying to do too much too quickly. So he had to pull back. And to his credit, he actually tried to work a little bit with the Republicans. Newt Gingrich had his contract with America, and they kind of worked together to a point. So it benefited the country because, and Clinton said, well, if I could benefit the country, it'll make me look good. So I'll put my political aspirations over the grand picture. The grand picture of it is socialism in America, progressivism across, globalism. But Bill Clinton's a politician, and he wants a dynasty, so he figures if I can win over the hearts of Americans, then I can maintain power longer. Hillary can take power after me, and then we can start pushing it. See, Democrats play the long game. They're running a marathon. They're not running a sprint. They think 20, 30, 40 years into the future. Stop and think about that when it comes to global warming / climate change. I've been hearing about global warming since 1980s. 1978, Time magazine had a cover that said the coming ice age, and it was global cooling. Then there was acid rains. Anything about the environment, anything they could with the environment, they were trying to implement that. Acid rain. Factories are putting pollutants in the air, and it's raining down on our statues and melting them and killing people because of the poison air. So then they came up with global warming. And global warming in 1988, Ted Danson said that we'd have 20 years before the Earth burns up. 20 years. Well, time came and time went. Didn't happen. Al Gore in 2006 said we had 10 years before the Earth burns up. The ice caps melt and we're flooded. 2016 came and went and we're still here. So here we are, 30, 40, almost 30 years later? About 30? 30 years later, over 30 years later, and they're still talking about global warming or how we're destroying the environment and how we're going to destroy the planet. Now, of course, when the temperature started to change and the Earth got cooler and they realized that, they said, well, wait a minute, global warming is not going to work. We have to rebrand it and move the goalpost. So they came up with climate change. And now you have a bunch of people who were, and this is where they play the long game. They drive this into your head, the head of your children, from 1980s to now. So kids who went to grade school in the 80s and college in the 90s and 2000s, they have been hit by your liberal teachers over and over and over again about global warming / climate change. So then you got morons like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who comes out and says the Earth is going to be destroyed in 12 years. Where'd that come from? I just heard a couple, maybe a month before she said that they were going to do another 20 years. And they bumped it out to 2100. See, they keep bumping it out because they play the long game. As long as we can keep changing the culture in this country little by little by little, turn up the heat little by little so they don't realize the heat's being turned up, the political heat, then we can change the way they think, and that'll affect generations of kids. This is what the left does. And they're trying to change. I mean, look at today. Think about 20 years ago. Would you ever, think 10 years ago, would you ever be talking about transgenders and misidentifying a gender and picking your own gender? Would we even talk about that 10 years ago? No, not at all. It wasn't even in the front of our minds. But they slowly introduce that. And then they make you feel bad. You're a homophobe because you don't believe that. No, we don't, because it's a sickness. It's a mental illness if you're a person and you're a certain gender and you think you're another gender, you have a mental problem. You don't just because you think it, you are it. You have a mental problem. But that's logic. So they don't work with logic, they work on emotion. Everything with the left is emotion. So they want to change everything for the long term. Believe me, that's what they want to do. And Donald Trump put a big, huge obstacle in their way. And that kills them because they were doing it. We went from Clinton and his attempts to Bush, who was pretty much a globalist and an establishment Republican. And he was a coward. He was a candy ass. Let's be honest. He would never fight back against Democrats or dishonors the office of the presidency. They're dishonoring your office every day. Every single day. They're destroying your integrity. How could you tolerate that? I would lose my ever-loving mind and have to fight back. But he sat there and took it and let his poll numbers get destroyed every day. And he didn't try to drive home conservative principles in this country. He just tried to maintain the status quo. And that was a problem he had. He had 8 years of it, but his whole thing was, his legacy was fighting the war on terrorism. Well, you could do more than one thing. And to show that his efforts were fruitless, who do we elect right after him? A former, in quotes, Muslim, Barack Obama, who's doing an apology tour right after he's elected and preaching that Muslims are the greatest people in the world. And they were the ones that helped found America. He actually said that. But that's what happened. Because Bush did not fight, the left were like, you know what, we're gonna inject ourselves into his presidency as much as possible. And they did. And they drove home their message because Bush would never fight against it. So here we had 8 years of Clinton, where the seeds were laid. 8 years of Bush, where the left was still watering the seeds because they controlled the news and they controlled the education system. So Bush isn't going to fight back against that. And there comes Obama. And Obama dumped a ton of fertilizer. He spewed fertilizer every time he spoke. Anyway, but he dumped a ton of fertilizer on those seeds, and they flourished. And in 8 years, the culture has changed so much that now we have a country that is being lost. And we need Donald Trump. This is why he was elected. This is exactly why he was elected, because the people in this country will fight back. They will, if they have pure ideals, you're going to have certain people who believe a certain thing, and the rest of them will kind of have to accept certain things. You know, gay marriage. A lot of people don't like gay marriage. They force that on us. Okay, so people are starting to, well, all right, you know what, it's whatever. Supreme Court ruled. Well, the Supreme Court doesn't make the law, so it's still not legal. Unless they pass a constitutional amendment, that's something you can tell your friends. If they argue about gay marriage, you just tell them gay marriage is not legal. Oh, yes, it is, because the Supreme Court said so. I said, when does the Supreme Court write laws? They don't. There was no law written that gay marriage is legal. They're trying to use the 14th Amendment, but the 14th Amendment was created specifically for slaves. That's it. For slaves. That's it. That was the whole reason it was written. So there's no law stating specifically that gay marriage is legal. So tell your friends, okay. And I've done this to some of my friends / debate friends, and I've said, if you're so sure that gay marriage is the way to go, pass an amendment. Go to Congress, have them pass an amendment, get 2/3 of the states to ratify it, and put it in the Constitution. And if it passes and it gets approved as an amendment in the Constitution, I'll accept it 100%. But as long as the Supreme Court is legislating from the bench, I will not accept it. And they freeze. Yeah, I know, exactly. Because they know for a fact it's not going to pass. The only way the left can pass is to legislate from the bench. That is why they are hating the fact that Donald Trump is picking so many federal court justices. That's why, or judges. That's why they're holding them up. They're so upset that he's replacing Supreme Court justices. That's why the Grim Reaper, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Crypt Keeper, is staying alive as long as possible. Weekend at Ruthie's over there. She's staying alive as much as possible. Like the Walking Dead. She's one of those, what are they called? The Whisperers? Is that what they're called? She's staying alive as long as she possibly can because, God forbid, she step down while Trump is president. And if she does step down, let's see, the Democrats are hoping that she'll, if she dies at all, she'll die right before the 2020 election. That way they can use the precedent that was set, and like they did with Obama, and they can not allow Trump to put forth a nominee in an election year. That's what they're hoping for. And then hopefully he doesn't win in 2020, and then they can pick their own liberal judge to replace her. But if she kicks off or steps down before 2020 election starts, in 2019, before we really get into the election year, Trump will have another conservative in the White House. He already has 2, and that'll flip the power. Be a 6-3. That's huge. Right now it's 5-4. Roberts is not really a 5. He's kind of the new Kennedy on the Supreme Court. He likes to side with the left too often, for my taste, when he shouldn't. But they want control of the courts. That's how they legislate from the bench. That's what it's all about. It's the long term, the long game. So, culture has changed. And Donald Trump, if he gets elected for 4 more years, can really change the culture of this country and bring it back to where it should be, America first. But because of that, he's upsetting the apple cart. And the establishment don't want him to do this. They can't deal with it. Which is why you had so many people against him on the Republican side, especially for his first 9 months. Because how dare he be here? Now, there's another reason for them not being on his side. There's another reason. The other reason we'll get to in a minute. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Let me go back to my original point. So Donald Trump passes the emergency, makes the emergency declaration. Well, so then it's purview to do so. And you have morons. Look, I like Ann Coulter. I do. But she's a little bit off the rails. She's a little kooky. I mean, she really is a kooky broad when you stop and listen to her. And she gets a little bit stupid. She calls herself a one-issue voter. It's no wonder she's still single. I've said this to her on Twitter. It's no wonder you're still single because you're never satisfied. You want instant gratification and you're never in it to win it. And she's just losing her mind. She was online last night freaking out, acting like if Donald Trump signs this budget deal, there's no way he's going to be, it's against the law for him to declare the national emergency. It's completely within his law. All he's signing is a budget. The fact that they give Donald Trump $1.37 billion does not mean that he's breaking the law by declaring a national emergency. It doesn't. They're giving him money to build the wall, but a small portion of the wall. However, he wants a larger portion of the wall. He wants the wall. So he got money, and they're thinking, well, he'll just take it and go away. No, that's not how Donald Trump works. He has a philosophy for this country. It's not based on ideology. It's based on love of country. Donald Trump does not want to build the wall. If Donald Trump were a politician, a typical politician, he would do what every other politician does, and he would make things up for a while. He would say, kick the can down the road. Oh, well, we'll get it done. We still have to do it. How many politicians have you heard saying, roads, bridges, and schools, over and over, roads, bridges, and schools? Obama said it for 2 terms. We got to fix roads, bridges, and schools. Are they fixing them? No. Do they ever fix them? No. We got to fix inner cities. Do they ever fix them? No. Are they going to? No. They're never going to do what they say, because if they actually accomplish something, really accomplish something, then they've eliminated their usefulness. It's like a consultant for a business. If you hire a consultant for your business, that's the worst thing you could do, is hire a consultant. Unless the consultant is a come in and get the job done, like fix it, that's the only type of consultant that's any good. If you hire a consultant who's there just to kind of keep things functioning, they're never going to fix the job, because the minute they fix the job, you no longer need them as a consultant, and then they stop making money. Politicians are the same way. The minute they fix something and actually accomplish something, well, then they don't have to run again. You'll think that in their mind, they'll say, well, these people don't need me anymore, so they'll vote me out and pick somebody new. So they're never going to fix anything. Well, Donald Trump doesn't think that way. He has 4 years, hopefully 8, to fix this country to a point where it will be long-lasting. Border security to him is not just some campaign promise. Border security to him is a way of life. It's an ultimate goal. It has to be done to preserve the United States of America. Think about this. If you have 4 more years of Donald Trump, the effects on the culture in this country will be astounding. Astounding. You'll have fewer illegal immigrants in this country. You'll have better opportunities for, for the legal immigrants in this country. You'll have better opportunities for blacks and Hispanics and Asians and other people in this country to get jobs, because they're not being taken by illegals. And don't tell me, oh, well, the companies need it, our prices are going to have to go way up. No. Here's what's going to happen. Necessity is the mother of invention. And if you're not getting illegals to harvest your crops, so to speak, and they're saying that other people won't do that because they don't want to be out in the fields harvesting crops, unless you pay them a lot more money to do that. Well, you never know. First off, you never know who's going to do what job when the job is out there and they have opportunities. But you know what? In the world of automation, you can have crop harvesting be fully automated now. There's ways of doing it. I would rather subsidize farmers to allow them to fully automate their crop harvesting and the maintenance of their fields, and train other people in different areas so they can develop and maintain the equipment that harvests those crops. Get rid of the illegals doing it, and once you automate it, the first cost, the upfront cost will be high just to get it going. That's why you subsidize it. But once it's done, it's going to become cheaper because you're not paying anybody. It's some machine. You just got to pay for maintenance. It's better all the way around. That's why all these people asking for $15 an hour for minimum wage to flip a burger. When you have a person flipping a burger, serving someone at a McDonald's, and they're making $15 an hour, they're making the exact same amount of money as a dental hygienist. Think about that. Someone who went to school to learn dentistry, to become a hygienist. And they're making the same as a person flipping burgers and dropping fries into a pot of grease or oil. Think about that. That's why the fast food places are going to automate too. It's just a matter of time. And these people are talking themselves right out of a job. Instead of saying, you know what, let's get rid of the illegals so we can get those jobs, they're saying, let's keep the illegals so they can take those jobs that we can hold as a second or third job, and we want to get paid more for doing less. That doesn't work that way. But you're getting rid of the illegals, so it's going to change the opportunities for people in this country. It's going to make the country safer. By putting up a wall and strictly enforcing the border, you're going to stop drugs from coming into this country as much as they are. Yeah, sure, they can come in from ports and whatnot. And don't give me the BS about, oh, the majority of illegals come in this country through the air. They overstay their visas. Wrong. You can skew those numbers any way you want. It's not the truth. It's a bunch of BS. And honestly, if they're coming in on an airplane, we know they're coming. We know who they are. We've tracked them. We're talking illegals that you can't track. Illegals that come across the border that you can't track, who don't register anyway, don't go through a port of entry, don't come through an airport, don't buy a ticket. They have no way of tracking who they are. That's what we're talking about when it comes to illegals in this country. You're not flying drugs on an airplane because you're going to get picked up. They might come by a ship, but if we're increasing security at the ports, that's not coming in either. Now, of course, there's always going to be some that get through. There's corruption and payoffs. But give me a break. We're going to make major changes. And if you're making this country safer, fewer drugs, you're creating a better culture. You know, from 1924 to 1965, there was no immigration. It was very controlled, but it was virtually no immigration into this country because too many people were coming over here from Europe after World War II. So they said, we have to just stop it altogether because the immigrants coming over have to assimilate to become part of America first. There's a culture in this country that's very different from any culture in any other country. It's a specific culture that we have, that we've developed over years. But it was built by immigrants. It was built by immigrants who believed in the American way of life. It was built initially by settlers who fled their country because they were being persecuted by the crown. And they came over here and created a country. And by creating the country from scratch, they weren't immigrants, they were settlers. They came here to an undiscovered land. The Indians lived here, but they didn't own the country. There was no charter or anything. It was just them living on land that they've always lived on. So they came over, they established the country, and they've established a culture that we've carried for over 200 years. And it's such a strong culture that has made America a juggernaut in record time. You have countries that are 3,000, 5,000 years old in terms of their culture, but they're nowhere near as successful as the United States. Nowhere close. The achievements that we've accomplished, the goals that we've set and followed through on, the advancements that we've injected into society, auto travel, refrigeration, space travel, multimedia, that all was here. It all grew in this country. And that's the culture of success, achievement, and growth that everyone needs to embody when they come to this country. That's what keeping the borders closed will do. It's incredibly successful if they do it the right way. And Donald Trump can do that. And after 8 years, that'll make a major change in the culture of this country. And it will carry on for decades, possibly. So Donald Trump signing the executive order is a very, very smart thing to do. It is within his purview. It was passed in 1978. I believe 1978 Executive Act. 50 executive orders have been passed by presidents past. I think it was like between Bush and Obama, they passed like 50 on their own or 30 on their own. So they're passed. And 31 of them are still in effect. Of the 50, 31 are still in effect. They're going to try to fight it in the courts. It's going to go to the Ninth Circuit. They're going to find some liberal judge who's going to say, no, you can't do it. And Trump even said this in his press conference today. They're going to find some liberal judge who said you can't do it, and then they'll take it to the Supreme Court, and it's within the Constitution. So Ann Coulter freaking out about he signed the bill, now he can't do it. Wrong, Ann, wrong. As much as I respect Ann, she's wrong. She's off the rails. She's becoming a petulant, foolish child. And I pretty much had my fill of her. So pissed off is Donald Trump and Ann Coulter that he started to badmouth her at the press conference today, pretty much ruled her insignificant, and he stopped following her on Twitter months ago, about a month ago, because she's a moron. She's just insatiable, thinking that the sky is falling if there's no wall. That's the whole thing. If there's no wall, well, it takes time, Ann. You can't just go in there and issue an executive order. If he went in and said, executive order, we're building the wall, then the left would go crazy, as would we if Barack Obama did that. Now, based on the executive order, there are some people saying, well, what happens if a Democrat president comes in and declares an executive order banning guns? Is there a national emergency? Is it a national emergency where the country is at threat? See, as the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump has that. And there is no rule in the Constitution that he's violating, because the Constitution states specifically he is the commander-in-chief, and his job is to protect the country from enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, they can use that domestic and say, well, guns, it's a domestic threat, guns, but those are citizens, and it also violates the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, so you can't do that. So, lots of luck, good luck. What about gay marriage? They could come in and say that gay marriage or no, that's, not, again, not a threat on the country. It's a very distinct difference. If you had liberal justices, if Hillary won, oh dear God, if Hillary had won, and you had a 7-2 liberal justices, which you would have, then, yeah, they would probably say, they find a way to say, yes, you can do that. But she didn't win. Donald Trump did. We have control of the House, we have control of the Senate, we have the Supreme Court, and he's not violating the Constitution in any way. So, it's all fine. And he's doing what he has to do. Congress isn't getting the job done. They're just playing games, and the security of this country is Donald Trump's job and Donald Trump's job alone. That's his responsibility. Budget, Congress, legislation, Congress and Senate, or House and Senate, budget, Congress. Let's just say that. Budget, Congress, and legislation. But safety, security, Commander-in-Chief. It's his responsibility. He can do what he wants. They can challenge it. I think it's after a year. After 1 year, they can challenge his they can re-examine his emergency declaration, and they can try to vote against it. But the chances of that are not high, especially because he's building a wall. And in a year, he can have a lot of it built. And what are they going to do? Tear it down? No, they'll just stop him. But at that point, he's already got a lot of the wall built. And if he gets reelected in 2020, he'll just do it again. Or if he gets the House back in 2020 and gets reelected, holy crap. So, that's good news today. That was huge. I was hoping Donald Trump would do that, and he actually did it. Running very long today, so I have a couple other topics I want to address, but I'm going to stop. Got off on that tangent to talk about the history and the culture of the country, which gets me fired up. But I'm going to stop right now, call this a show, and then I'll come back with others later. I still have to talk about the Russia collusion thing falling apart, which I love. We knew it was a fallacy anyway, and I'm just going to love rubbing it in the faces of the left, because this is just glorious. Glorious, but it also speaks to the deep state and a coup, an actual coup d'etat that was taking place within the government through Obama's Justice Department. And that goes along with our culture thing we discussed and how badly Obama has destroyed this country, and thank God, literally thank God, that Hillary Clinton is not president, because it would have been even worse, and we would never have recovered after 4 or 8 years with her. That horror. And then the other thing we got to talk about is Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett, the case, I was attacked by 2 white rednecks at 2 a.m. in Chicago case. Well, some new information came out today. This carries over from what I said yesterday. So I'll record those again, taking a break for a second, lubricate the vocal cords a bit, and we'll be back with our next update. So until then, check back in another video later on. I'll try to link to them down below when they're up. Until later on, have yourself a great day.